Well, the UFC's debut here in Brooklyn has mercifully come and gone. In the end, it's a somewhat forgettable and perhaps more importantly, controversial night. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani. It is very late here in Brooklyn. That is the man in the hat. We're in the Barclays Center. UFC 208 is over. And we have a new UFC women's featherweight champion. UFC tonight crowned their 11th champion. Currently, it's their 4th European champion and just the second person from the Netherlands to become UFC champion. Her name, of course, Germaine de Randamie. She defeats Holly Holm via unanimous decision. And Chuck, let's start there because it kind of signified the entire night, in the sense that it was controversial, it was close, it was a decision, only one finish on the 10-fight card. So let me ask you right off the top, who'd you have it for? Who'd you score the fight for?
Well, I had it 3-2 for Holly. And she was up here just a minute ago saying she thought she won the last 3 rounds, and that's exactly how I scored it. I was writing the live blog at the time, so you're not. Sometimes you feel like you miss some things, but that's the way I saw it. Seeing it around the other way seems proper to me too. But at the same time, yeah, that was not the greatest fight. It was a little weird. It was weird to hear a crowd booing, and some of them streaming out before the decision was even read. Wow. Things like that. I was just like, wow, I just would have never anticipated it kind of going down that path. You know what I mean?
Worth noting, all 5 rounds very close, right? I mean, hard rounds to score, but I think the consensus was first and second for Germaine, third, fourth, fifth for Holly Holm. Now, there was some controversy on top of the judges' scorecards. End of the second round, Germaine de Randamie connects with a very, very hard punch, a punch that appeared to have seriously rocked Holly Holm. End of the third round, she connects with a 1-2 after the horn as well. And I should say that the second round that I'm talking about after the horn, I mean, these are illegal punches. You cannot throw punches after the horn sounds. Do you think the referee, Todd Anderson, should have taken a point after the second round? And if not, should he have done so after the third round?
Well, certainly after the third round, because the reason those seemed to stand out to me in my mind, especially the second round one as it happened, was because they had tied each other up so much in that toil on the fence and stuff. There was no freedom for them to stand and punch. Holly was kind of taking away that, kind of posting her on the fence. So when that happened, it was like, oh, that's a game changer in the sense that she hasn't really taken a punch that hard in the fight so far. But in that sense, you could say, well, she gets the warning. But when it happens in the second time after the end of the third round, you're like, okay, that's the one you got to say, hey, I warned you once. This is a point deduction. That's the way I saw it. The second one seemed to me a little bit more innocent. Like it didn't seem as egregious. But at the same time, you're watching it in live action. I don't know how it looked to people at home, but I mean, the second time, if you do it once, it's like, and you get by. But this 2 times, there's got to be some kind of action on that, especially when it's altering a fight like that. You know what I mean? Holly talked about it, and she's a competitor. She wants to knock her out, but she also admitted, she's putting her guard down at that moment. Right. That shouldn't stand.
And would it have been something if they would have taken a point away and this title fight for this division that has no other fighters in it right now would have ended up in a draw? I mean, it would have been fitting, right? Somewhat poetic.
Well, at least they'd have a definitive direction for what they could do next. I mean,
which is nothing?
Which would be just to play it back, I guess.
Right.
Because
just maybe call the whole thing off.
Because you at least have 2 people that it makes sense to fight again. Whereas because of right now, part of the reason it ended with a thud in a strange sense was that de Randamie, she gets the belt and she's immediately like, I'm going to go have my hand fixed. I'm going to have some surgery. And they kind of flash over to Cyborg, and you're like, well, what does that mean? You're not even sure what it means. And really, that's the only other fight out there, other than doing a rematch, that the crowd was booing. It was a competitive fight, but I'm not sure people would be pining to see it again.
Sure. And how about this? I mean, Cyborg is still provisionally suspended by USADA. Yesterday, Dana White made the media rounds and seemed to express some sort of, hopefulness that this thing is going to get rectified sooner rather than later. He seems rather confident at this point that maybe she won't be out for as long as we thought. So then you have Cyborg sitting there, and the UFC flies her out, which is great. They're getting behind her. They're investing in her, finally. And then Germaine wins, and then she says on the mic that she has an injured hand from her win against Larissa Pacheco in 2015 that goes back 2 fights. I mean, the whole thing just seems so uncertain. You don't really know what to make of it, right?
It was weird going in. It was
Yeah.
weirder going out. That's what I thought when that was all going down. I was like, this whole thing. I mean, we've been talking about this all week. It just didn't make logical sense in the UFC, standard, because they usually have future in mind with everything. And this one, it just seemed like pretty haphazard. Let's see what happens, and then we'll figure it out. But I really don't know the solution as to what happens next, other than like maybe Megan Anderson or something like that. But I mean, right now that she's not on roster, and Cyborg has some red flags to deal with, and now you have your champion going to have surgery, and that's indefinite. So, and then you have Holly Holm, who's lost 3 fights in a row now, and it's what a mess. It's a messy situation.
You want to give these fighters the benefit of the doubt in the post-fight interview. They've just been through, 25 minutes of hell, right? I mean, this is an unbelievable athletic endeavor. But you just became champion in a new weight class. You were not fighting for a belt at 135. You were given sort of this golden ticket to fight in this, new weight class for a new belt. Get people excited. Call out Cyborg. Say, I'm waiting for you. Don't talk about the hand now. Talk about it later. But I just felt like to end the show on that note with some people booing was unfortunately the wrong move for Jermaine.
100%.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. You had to kind of sell. She did a very good job, I thought, of selling the fight in the end.
Leading up to it, she did a good job, right?
And I thought, maybe this would be, maybe we're being a little too harsh on this. I know it doesn't there's not a lot of merit that you could throw behind it, but at the same time, you're like, if she has enthusiasm, I thought if she won, we'd see that, and I didn't think we saw that at all.
Right.
So, I mean, if I was her, I would have waited to talk about the hand, let the dust settle a little bit, let us be excited, I guess, for her, to what extent you could be.
And so now what do we make of Holly Holm? 3 losses in a row after defeating Ronda Rousey, that unbelievable win at UFC 193 in Melbourne. She has that, that sort of Hail Mary loss to Miesha Tate at 196, outworked, outperformed by Shevchenko in July, and then this fight, which a lot of us thought that she won. How is history now going to treat Holly? We talked about this, in the preview show, but do you feel that now people are going to look back on that win against Ronda Rousey and take away what she earned that night?
Yes, I do believe that will happen. It was more complicated when we were going in to kind of figure that out, but I think having seen this, I think that will happen to an extent.
Is that fair?
I don't know. Gosh, like you were saying, she had her moments in in all of these fights. It's not like she was just destroyed and didn't belong in there, A lot of it was she said she just went off the game plan, or she didn't pull the trigger at the right time, or she did something silly within, you know what I mean? And she's really taking accountability for that. And it's tough. It's weird. It's weird to see a person who's been competitive in all those 0-3, because you think the law of averages would shake out that she'd win at least one of those. So it's weird. I can see why people would say it, because 3 losses officially will be 3 losses. But I think when you really look at it, you think, well, she's not. It's not reflective of an 0-3 type of run. I mean, she's been very competitive in those fights.
I think it's hogwash. I think in 20 years, someone might look back and see 3 losses in a row on her Fight Finder record and say, oh, wow, she really had a fall from grace. But if you really look at those performances, it has nothing to do with what happened in Melbourne. You know what I mean? And people want to take away even what Ronda did because of the fact that she then lost 3 after beating her. And that's silly as well. But I feel like it's coming. I feel like come Monday, come Tuesday, the take will be she was a never was. She was Buster Douglas on the anniversary of Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson.
Was it really?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
I mean, it's just, you could see it coming a mile away, right?
Yes. It's hard with Holly is it's like, you always wonder what stings worse. If you get knocked out, you just get caught. And some people hate that because they have to come back from a knockout. Or does it hurt in a fight like that?
Yeah.
Where I think there's plenty of people who thought Holly Holm won. Like I said, I had her winning. I think other people, but it was very close. And does it just hurt that you have to reflect on something that was so close to winning, and then you have to do it? Because she already kind of went through that already once, and then with the Miesha Tate fight, she's winning it the whole way until the very end. I mean, these are hard losses for her.
Yeah.
And
she seemed demoralized, right? I mean, she seemed like her lip was quivering, like she was on the verge of tears many times. Give her a lot of credit for actually showing up. We've talked about this ad nauseum at this point. People showing up, moments where they hit rock bottom, so to speak, where they feel like, they've just, lost this massive opportunity. She showed up and really faced the music.
This is what the fight game's about.
Yeah.
You see somebody up there like that, and you think, we can't ever put ourselves in that position.
Right.
We don't fight. But, you see somebody who puts it all out there like that, and then goes up and addresses the media. You can't have more respect for somebody like that.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just a consummate professional, and everything that we've seen with her in victory, you see in defeat. She's still the same humble person.
Right,
very, very interesting to note those things.
Yeah, and you talk about unknowns. We don't even know where she's going to fight next. You know what I mean? Like, will she stay at 145? Will she go back to 135? What direction she goes in? There have been hints of, at some point, calling it a career. I mean, she's been doing this for a very long time, wants to start a family. So there's a lot of unknowns surrounding Holly Holm at this point. What a turn of events. A year ago this time, she's the UFC women's bantamweight champion going into her first title defense. It's amazing what happens in a year. Okay, let's move along. Speaking of controversy, Anderson Silva defeated Derek Brunson via unanimous decision. This, to me, was quite the shocker. More controversial than the main event. I scored it for Derek Brunson. I think you can get away with a 29-28. You can make a case for a 30-27. I don't know how you make a case for a 30-27 for Anderson Silva, which is one of the scorecards, which is what it was for him. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. Make sense of it for me. Do you think Anderson won this fight?
I do not. I was talking to Casey, our cameraman here. I said, and he said the same thing. When you heard 30-27, that to me signaled that Brunson would won because you could put that case together. You say 30-27, okay, but not 30-27 for Anderson. I just don't know how you can even say that.
How'd you score it?
I had it 29-28 for Brunson.
Okay, so you had it, I'm guessing, the first and third for Brunson?
I had it, yes, first and third, correct, yeah.
All close rounds. I thought the third was the easiest.
The third round was the only one that you could say was like sort of definitive, and that's why you can't see a 30-27. For somebody to give that round, it's just like, what? How does that work? Because he got taken down. I mean, he was the whole round. It didn't seem like his round, but the takedown, and they stayed in that position for the last 90 seconds. I mean, to me, that didn't make sense. But to make sense of that, bizarre because we've already kind of put an asterisk on his name in this weird way because his one victory in the last few years was the Diaz victory, and it was a very strange fight, and then all the aftermath of what happened to that. This one adds to this strangeness because I think a lot of people, I mean, I was on press row, and everybody kind of dropped their jaw at that decision. And
did anyone on press row say that they thought he won?
I didn't hear anybody say that.
I didn't see it either.
But I guess that's what's weird, especially unanimous. I mean, split decision, anything like that. But the 30-27 and a unanimous. I mean, it's just the judging all night was kind of strange. And
it wasn't a great night for the New York Commission, and they're still kind of getting their feet wet. He, in the post-fight press conference, said that he thought he won the first and second round. What's he going to say? He seemed very emotional, and it was actually, I thought, this has nothing to do with the fight, the most authentic and genuine Anderson that we've seen at a post-fight press conference.
It's fun when he's speaking the English, too.
Yes, that's right.
St. Black
Dana
White.
Shares his thoughts.
No, it was a lot of fun. The first round, I thought Brunson was he won it. Like, if you just sat back and thought what happened in that round, you say, well, Brunson won that one. Second round, I would totally give to Silva.
Although debatable as well.
Yeah, it's debatable, but I thought that it was fun to watch him. There was a moment in that round, I don't know if you caught it, where he sort of snapped into that. He's doing his shoulder boogie stuff, and he's doing all this, and he starts to snap off that counter jab, and I was like, oh, wait, because it's like it brought it all back. Here's the vintage Silva, So that round was a lot of fun, and I think that was part of the reason I was like, well, that's his round, because he started to turn it on and was playing around, landing shots, doing that stuff. But, yeah, I mean, that's the only round you can give him, I think.
They both had brief moments, I thought, of brilliance, if you want to call it that, but outside of the judging, my big takeaway from that fight was, two takeaways. It seemed like Brunson was a little gun-shy at times, perhaps coming off the knockout to Robert Whittaker, as we spoke about on the preview show. And it seemed to me like Anderson just looked older and slower. I mean, he said it himself, in the third round he felt old. Do you agree with those assessments?
I do, to an extent. That's why I said it was fun in that second round, because I felt like we saw him, we saw a little flashes,
back the clock.
Flashes of this old vintage Silva, but the third round, for sure, it seemed like he wasn't, he wasn't carrying on like he was in the second. So, who knows? He was talking about he was being slower and stuff. It certainly seemed like he was being more cautious. He wasn't just. There was a couple times where he surged forward, and those were interesting. But maybe they both were. I think he wanted to be more of a counter. He wanted to pull off the counters more in this one, and Brunson was also cautious. So the fight started a little slow, them kind of feeling each other out, and then it had some pockets, some skirmishes and stuff where it ended up being a decent round. But I don't know. I didn't see any huge leap where you think like he clearly dropped off. Sometimes you see that, especially guys at this age, 41 years old, you'll see a clear drop off. I didn't see it clear, but I did see some slowing. And in the third round, for sure, I saw some fatigue that you're not used to seeing with that guy, you know.
Gun to your head, who would you like to see him fight next? Because he seems interested in continuing his career.
That's a toughie. I mean,
Can I throw a name out?
Sure.
Luke Rockhold. His name has kind of been forgotten.
man.
What about that?
That'd be great. I know that Luke Rockhold would love that fight, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe that would make sense now.
Or would you prefer Luke against Jacare, who also won tonight against Tim Boetsch?
The good thing is you could go a lot of directions
Yeah.
with this. I just, in a strange way, because Jacare, you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but Jacare basically had probably the only really shining performance on this
Only
card.
finish.
Yeah. And so you think, well, he should be in the conversation for a title shot, and Yoel Romero's there. So if for some reason they give him Michael Bisping, it's going to be a little weird, like we talked about before.
Oh, who, Anderson?
Yeah, if they give him...
I don't know if you can do that. But
I didn't think
crazier things have happened.
I was going to say, I didn't think they'd give him Dan Henderson, and suddenly
true.
they did that. So I don't know if you could do it twice in a row, though, for Michael Bisping to accommodate him. But
if they do Bisping-Romero in Dallas, as Romero has suggested,
Yeah.
at this point you might as well have Jacare just wait. I mean, that fight is in, what, 2.5 months or so? So just have him wait for the winner. You got the guy, and now you're starting to develop a queue at 185, and that's why I think, okay, Rockhold Anderson. If Anderson beats Rockhold, okay, now you could start talking about him getting a title shot.
I mean, I hadn't contemplated that, but I'd contemplated it before when Rockhold had talked about it. But it didn't seem quite right when he was calling him out because Anderson was on the downslope and he was the one up here. But actually, that makes sense to me right now. Him coming off a victory, however you want to look at it, officially it's going to go down as a victory. And Rockhold no longer at that right where he was before. He's just down a notch. So
Well, he's still sitting on that Bisping loss because he had the injury.
He's still sitting on that, and I'm like, you know, if you wanted to justify that matchmaking, you absolutely could at this point.
Did we learn anything about Jacare, who submitted Tim Boetsch via Kimura? I mean, again, only finish, as dominant as ever, but you know he was a big favorite. Was there any revelations here? Any lessons learned about him?
I just think he's amazing at not being complacent. I mean, we've seen him against guys like Chris Camozzi. You know, he's had like some weird matches. But he always just takes care of business, and I felt like even in this one, you know, he wasn't like he was just like, I'm not going to ever engage you. I'm going to wait for my moment to take you down and try to play in my safe realm. He kind of mixed it up with him a couple times, and he hit him with a couple of shots, and I was thinking, and actually there was one point where I thought he might have gotten tagged. Early on, and I was like, "Ooh, this is a little crazy." But it didn't really ever seem like he was putting himself in danger. Just very businesslike and methodical in how he does these things, and to watch him just go through, it doesn't matter. I mean, Tim Boetsch is a tough guy, you know, and to watch him go through guys like that is just, it's pretty amazing because you want to see a guy who's functioning on that level, just like Damian Maia. You want to see a guy who's functioning at his best, you know, get a shot at whatever the standard is, which is the title. So I just thought it just kind of reinforced his case.
Yeah, and you wonder if the UFC will now re-sign Tim Boetsch, kind of does them this solid by taking this fight on sort of short notice, last fight of his deal. You know, for Jacare, he, in my opinion, he says he wants to stay active, but at this point you're kind of playing with fire. You're so close. If that fight is 2 months away, you might as well stick around and just kind of wait and see what happens, but the guy wants to make money and you can't hate him for that. Let me ask you about Glover Teixeira. He defeats Jared Cannonier. They sort of roll the dice with this one, going to the top contender against a guy who is, you know, maybe bottom end of the top 15 if we even want to put him there. And Glover afterwards was actually very critical of his performance. Said he had an injured shoulder, I believe, was able to, you know, was having a hard time to really kind of adapt to that and had to take some time off and wasn't able to box. He said, were you as critical of his performance as he was?
I mean, it's really more of a reflection. If you'd seen that fight on a card where there was a lot of excitement, maybe you would have been like, hey, what are you talking about? You were pretty dominant in a fight. You took him down and you were able to really dictate your will for 15 minutes, and that's what he did. I just think that his fight was a victim of being surrounded by a lot of other duds.
Right.
And so it didn't look very good in that context. But ultimately, I didn't think there was anything for him to be. I mean, he needed to win this fight, and this was a guy who was being given a shot to see if there's a baton being passed. You know what I mean? Like, is it time to see this guy come up and your time to start being gatekeeper, all these things? And he proved that there's still a chasm between those two things. And that's what you should be doing in that position, you know. So I thought he looked great. I mean, ultimately, I mean, not great, but I thought he looked very solid. Like he was just he knew what he was going to do, and he did it.
Yeah, and credit to Jared Cannonier. I mean, he hung in there against a guy, kind of fighter that he's never fought before. I mean,
he's had what? This is only his 4th fight in the UFC. He has a full-time job. All of a sudden, you're fighting a guy like Glover Teixeira, who's fought beasts for so long.
Yep.
And I mean, I thought you could get a little bit more of a sense of how good he could possibly be going forward. So that was a win for him too, in a weird way, just to kind of give him. I mean, he put up some good resistance, I guess, in that fight.
The irony is we've been talking about new blood at 205. He really isn't that because he wants to go down to 185.
Yeah.
So you're not really establishing.
Start as a heavyweight.
Yeah. You're not establishing much there, but I thought kind of a win-win for him as well. Had nothing really to lose. Fight of the night, there was no controversy when it came to this one. Dustin Poirier defeating Jim Miller. A very fun 3-round fight. Poirier transported to the hospital afterwards. We should note Jermaine Durandamy also transported to the hospital for that injured hand. A very fun fight. Yeah. Good performance. I thought this is the one that really stood out. A no-brainer as far as fight of the night is concerned, right?
Yep, 100%. Like, and especially it kicked off the main card. It always looked like a good fight, but it kicked off the main card the right way. You know, that's what you want to happen. There was some back and forth moments. Jim Miller, I think he was a fairly sizable underdog, but as he does, he had his moments in this fight and kind of got the crowd rolling. Getting into that. Again, a weird tarnish at the end with a 28-28 score, which is sort of inexplicable. I mean, I don't even know how. Yeah, I don't even know how you get to that. Like, I don't even know how that would work. I didn't get a chance to look at the scorecard, but things like that. I mean, the judges certainly didn't contribute the right way to this night. But both of those guys, I tell you, when you see a fight like that where it goes back and forth, and there's Dustin Poirier in the end, I thought really established what he was trying to do, but they both limp out of there.
Sure.
I mean, they both limp by like they had just been through a war. So anytime they do it like that, man, you got to appreciate a fight like that.
The night started with Long Island's own Ryan LaFleur picking up a win, his first win in his home state. Very nice moment there. Some other notable victories, Bilal Muhammad winning on short notice. Your boy Nick Lentz faltering to Islam Makhachev in a rather one-sided loss. Is there any
the closest 30-25 fight I've ever seen?
Yeah, that's right. Doug Crosby, nice job with that 30-27. Is there any other fight that we wanna, or should we just go to the Ian McCall curse that you put on the poor guy? I mean, really, the poor guy.
I won't be doing that again. I waited. I wanted to actually tweet that a day before, but I was like, I'm going to wait until after they officially make weight and all this, because you think at that point all the danger zone is done.
Did you wait?
I did.
So you waited till after the weigh?
I waited until after the morning weigh-ins, and I was like, all right, I think it's really happening, and I'm not really thinking about a jinx. So, I mean, I shouldn't have done it just given his that track record.
And we shouldn't joke as well because, as recently as just a couple hours ago, we heard that he was still in the hospital feeling very ill. So Ian McCall faces more bad luck. The 4th time since July that his fight gets canceled just hours before fight night. The first 2 times wasn't his fault. Last 2 times, he fell ill. And so you wonder if there's someone up there trying to tell him something. But that is unprecedented bad luck for Ian McCall. Really is. I've never seen anything like it.
He's the most unusual. I mean, just going back to the flyweight, with the
first
draw.
one. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he always has some weirdness going on. But to travel to these cities each time with the intention and a camp and everything to show, it's just unreal, man. Yeah. Unreal luck for that guy.
Can't wrap your head around it. We can't wrap our head around this night here in Brooklyn. Wow, what a segue there.
Scrub it from your memory bank.
Well, there are some lessons to be learned here, and perhaps most so for the New York State Athletic Commission. Again, a work in progress. We've seen some sort of bumps in the road each time the UFC has come to New York State. Madison Square Garden, Albany, this one in Brooklyn. They'll get another shot in just a couple of months in Buffalo. So here's hoping no more controversies there, but you never know in this fight game. For now, we'll say goodnight. Thank you so much for watching our coverage all week long from here in the BK. That is the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. I am Ariel Helwani. The guy behind the camera is Casey. Esther is somewhere here. We're all very tired. They're about to kick us out, but I will remind you that the MMA Hour is back on Monday from our brand new studio. Here's hoping everything goes okay there as well. I'm very nervous. I'll be praying to the podcast gods for the next 36 or so hours. But we're done. Thank you again. We'll see you on Monday. Appreciate your time. Good night.